We'll just jump right in. So really this time, I think we just thought it would be good to get to hear from specifically a youth pastor's perspective regarding artificial intelligence. And so, as I mentioned, I don't know to what extent you're using AI. I don't know to if you're hesitant or if you're on board or so we're gonna kind of roll with the punches as we get them here. But so I just have some questions here that I want to ask you, and I sent these over to you ahead of time. But so really, what are your initial thoughts when you hear AI in ministry? And again, this is coming from a youth pastor.
Yeah, I think it's kind of what you guys had talked about last night, to where it's all about the heart behind it. I mean, I also teach our students all the time. It's anything with our relationship with God. It's got to start with the heart, and that includes the tools and the products that we put out. If it's not coming from the heart, then don't do it. Don't use it, kind of thing. If you're using it with bad intentions, it's obviously not the way to go. And so with AI, I think I'm on the opposite of Corey, where I'm not a skeptic, but I'm not fully on board with it, but I'm more on board than I am a skeptic. So I think I'm like how Corey is in that line. I'm just what the opposite is of more on board, but I'm still trying to figure it out at the same time.
Yeah. So are there some ways that you're currently utilizing AI in your week to week? And so part of this is also you mentioned you're in seminary as well. And so that's kind of like a whole nother conversation. Yeah. AI is getting a lot of column inches in the world of academics, and some teachers and professors are leaning in and they support it, and some teachers are using AI to develop curriculums and trying to go the route of teaching people to use AI correctly in the classroom. Yeah. And some teachers go the other way and just kind of blanket ban, and now some classes are going back to you have to write things by hand with pen and paper, because that's the only way to know that it was actually written by you. And so so what are some ways that you're currently using AI, or if you are? It sounds like you are to some degree.
Yeah, so the big two ones is just ChatGPT. I mean, I feel like everybody uses it nowadays. It's kind of hard to almost not use it, with just in the world that we're in now. And the other one that I've found really useful, especially this calendar year, was Canva AI, because they have really pumped out, Canva AI, where they've pumped out a lot of kind of new and cool stuff of just helping with images and getting you started to where you want to go. Those are pretty much the only two. I mean, you got your small stuff and like Google and whatnot, but
it's starting to integrate into everything. I mean, even
really
like
is.
The new iPhone updates have the new Apple Intelligence and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so ChatGPT is obviously kind of the front runner right now. We joked about it on the stream yesterday. Sometimes you just got to be the first. Sometimes you just got to be the first one, and they were really the first one to market generative AI to the public. And then since then, it's been a rat race. Google has Gemini, Meta has their Meta AI. That's Facebook. And but even the things I just had overheard a conversation with somebody this morning. I was teaching a Bible study, and they didn't even realize that I do all this, and they were in an encouraging way talking about how cool it's been when you go on Google now and you Google something, that it now provides that AI summary at the top. At the time, you don't even need to search for the thing you were searching for anymore. And so, AI is definitely just integrating itself into everything. But so you mentioned ChatGPT. What are some ways that you're using ChatGPT? Like, so what are like some practical applications that you've found yourself using ChatGPT?
So kind of the two biggest ones is obviously with sermon prep. I know you guys talked about it quite a bit yesterday with, you uploaded your whole sermon and just like, how would this fit with, I think it was a single mother, something like that. I've done things like that where it's like, how would this relate to a high schooler? I've done that a couple times before. I've done it to where it's like, what verses can I use for this thing? And kind of how you guys talked about it yesterday. I kind of go a step further. I go and read those verses on my own. Then, does it actually fit? Does the context of the verse fit as a whole? Rather than just saying, "Oh, this is a cute little verse."
So I'm curious. In that, have you have you found instances where what ChatGPT produced was actually inaccurate from a scriptural, like, hermeneutic standpoint, or have you found it to be pretty? I mean, obviously, we don't want to lead
Yeah.
people to
Mhm.
overconfidence, but have you found it to be
Mhm.
pretty reliable when it comes to?
I
Um,
yeah, I would say it's like 80-20.
okay,
I think it really depends on what you're searching for and kind of what we're going to get into today. It's like, what is your prompt going into it? I mean, I know me and you have always joked about the Philippians 4:13 verse where it's, I can do all things through Christ, and everybody always takes it out of context. And, there's a few times where Chat GPT also gave it to me out of context, but it feels like such a common thing to where I'm like, I don't know if I can really fault Chat GPT on that, or people where it's getting from, kind of thing. And so
sure.
there's been some other ones too where I'm like, that doesn't really fit too much, but it's probably like 80-20 where it's given some pretty good, reliable kind of verses or contexts as to maybe just something I want to add into a sermon.
Yeah, and I'm curious, of that 20% where you're saying it produced an inaccurate result,
Mm-hmm.
how much of that, and this might be an impossible question for you to answer, but so for you guys watching, I asked Noah what he thought would be a good tutorial for this live stream, and he
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, the how to craft better prompts.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious, if you had to guess, of that 20% of inaccurate results, how much of that do you think is a byproduct of just the natural limitations of AI and the sources that it's pulling from,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe poorly crafted prompts?
Um, Out of that 20%, I'd probably say
This is
more
purely
on,
hypothetical, so
yeah, I don't know, probably a little bit more than half, like where if I reworded it or something, it probably gave a little better. Um, Maybe it asked for a specific, like, I don't know, like fear of the Lord instead of just fear. If I kind of expanded it out a little bit, some of the time it kind of fixed itself, but then other times it's like, no, this still doesn't quite work out. So,
yep,
um,
sure,
yeah,
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 that's interesting.
yeah.
So I'm gonna transition to kind of the ethical side
Mm-hmm,
of the use of AI in ministry. And so as a pastor, I'm sure you've thought through this at least maybe a little bit.
mm-hmm,
Um, do you have concerns regarding the use of AI in ministry?
I guess concerns or anything like that I would have um, is just I don't want to say overindulgence, but like over relying on it, right? You're
Sure.
almost relying on that too much more than actually getting in your own Bible and relying on the Holy Spirit and really getting at the heart of what God is trying to tell you rather than just saying, well, I kind of give up. This is getting too hard. It's taking too much time. Let's just go to Chat GPT. I think that's where my worry would always be with pastors using it. It's, and again, I think you guys mentioned it last night. You have to kind of trust your pastor to, be good with it, be obedient
Yeah.
with the tools that are given with it.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point, and this I think pastors need to be aware of this, and I think anybody that utilizes artificial intelligence needs to be aware of this. We as a culture can easily make a unwise shift away from progress and just focus on results. And so what ends up happening is, if we can use these tools to create good end results, but we didn't grow ourselves in the process to get to those end results. It's
Mhm,
no different than if you were to go to a gym and you go up to a rack of
mhm,
weights and you can't lift them, but instead of working to be able to lift them, somebody else comes and helps you lift it for you, or get you
mhm,
90% of the way, and then you then are able to, post on your social media feeds that you just lifted your new PR,
mhm,
but you're actually no stronger, you're no
mhm,
better than you were before, because you
mhm,
actually didn't need to grow through the process. And so it's going to be, I think that's one of the things that makes me most nervous about just the coming AI wave is
mhm.
we're going to get a lot better at producing things without actually becoming better at producing things, if that makes sense.
Mhm, mhm.
And so that's where we need to be careful, I think. And so we need to keep ourselves honest, and we need to make sure that we're growing in the process. And again, I've joked about this in many seminars, but I think at least the three of us here on this stream right now, and most people watching, we're probably all told in math class in high school that we had to learn to do it pen and paper, because we're not going to walk around with a calculator in our pockets.
Mm-hmm.
But here we are with calculators in our pockets on our cell phone. And if you were to ask me to do long division by hand right now, I'd probably throw the sheet of paper back at you. So there's a deeper conversation there, and that is a conversation that we're going to get into on this not this stream, but in future streams. And so there's a lot to unpack and talk about there, but it is something for us to be aware of. Are we growing as people, or are we just getting better at accomplishing tasks? And what's our goal? Does God want us to just be box checkers, just to be able to accomplish something? Or does he want us to be actually growing as human beings and growing in our gifting and our skills? And so that's a good, I'm glad that you brought that up. You mentioned Canva AI briefly. Canva is a fantastic tool. We're gonna have entire episodes focused on Canva. Our church is using it for our bulletins and everything that we're doing graphic design. It's just really the best.
Even before AI, it was so good.
Yeah, and now that they've included some really solid AI tools in there, it's a great. If you're a pastor and you're not using Canva, if you're using Microsoft Publisher for anything at your church, go check out Canva.
Most of the time, if you do a church business account, they let you have it for free too.
If you're a 501c3, if you're a 501c3, I got Canva Premium for our entire church, unlimited seats for free. So you have that option as well. So I'm going to give you one more question here before we move into to really the tutorial that you asked for. And so I'll be able to keep you up while we're doing this. But where do you see potential for collaboration between tech and traditional ministry? Is the old way the best way? Is there are you okay introducing new modern technology? Where do you see that kind of as a slippery slope? And specifically, I'm assuming in youth ministry, your students are all well aware of AI, and so I'm curious what you're hearing from your students regarding this new technology. I mentioned, and I'll let you answer this question in just one second, but I was just talking with my son, who's 9, and we mentioned last night on the stream that we're probably going to do this as a content for one of the weeks, trying to equip pastors or parents to be able to explain and help their children understand what AI is, what it's not, how to use it, how not to use it. And our kids are going to experience AI their entire life, and there's not going to be any avoiding it. And so I'm curious what's going on in the high school in the youth world as it relates to AI.
So I mean, the best way that I can kind of explain it, or at least go through with how I've had conversations with, is the root problem is not a new problem, right? It's just a new tool to get to faster results. And it's, are we holding that at a higher pedestal than anything else? Are we using that above than kind of how we're just saying, just working hard, or like just getting to what it is. But I think it's okay to introduce it, but not rely on it. It can't be your go-to response. It should be, okay, hey, I prayed about this. I went through this. I talked to this person, whatever. Then go back through that process again, and then finally go through ChatGPT or some other AI resource. I think there needs to be some wisdom, and hopefully if someone's in a pastoral position, they have that wisdom already. Hopefully, you would hope so. But I think it can be a very slippery slope, if it's not, I don't want to say checked, but if it's just not with the right intentions, right? If you don't have the right heart, kind of how I was saying earlier, it's like, if your heart going into it is just saying, oh man, this makes my job 10 times easier. Well, like, why are you doing it in the first place? Why did you get into the ministry? Why did you get into whatever? But as far as with youth ministry, like, they obviously have it. They obviously know it. They obviously know social media and everything. And there's been times with students where I've talked to them and they're like, they were surprised that like I'm on social media and things like that. And I told them, I was like, one, I want to be able to communicate with you guys. Like, I want to know what you guys are saying. But then two, it's like I need to know what things are going on in the world and be prepared to
Sure.
be able to talk to you guys about it, right?
Let me
Yeah.
ask you a question here. So, because I think you're going to uniquely deal with this in youth ministry, and um, I don't know that I necessarily have an answer on off the cuff for you,
Mhm.
but one of the big fears that I have, and I remember giving these presentations and
Mhm.
seminars and talking with pastors, and they always ask me the same questions. It's what's the worst thing that's coming down the pipeline? Um,
Mhm.
what are all the ways that this can go wrong? And one of the things that I think is going to happen, and we mentioned this yesterday in kind of a different context, but these tools are made to be engaged with conversationally,
Yeah.
right? And that's not because the programmers are trying to make us think that this is a person that we're talking to,
Mhm.
but because we're having a conversation right now. We as humans, we communicate best through conversation. And so by mimicking that on the computer side, we're able to get better information faster. And so that's why
Yeah.
these, chat GPTs, Gemini's, Meta, all these things, Claude, are all conversational, really engines for us to be able to communicate with and get information. The challenge comes with the fact that they're able to mimic human like interactions really,
Mhm.
really well.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of different ways that this can and will be used um,
Mhm.
incorrectly. One of
Right.
the concerns I have is, and if we just put ourselves in the mindset here, it's not hard to envision this, and I would be willing to bet this is actually already taking place. I remember sharing this in a seminar a year ago, and I said it's going to happen. It's probably happening now, where you're a high school student, you're kind of socially awkward, you're kind of a
Mhm.
loner, you don't have a lot of friends, people you're bullied, people pick on you,
Mhm.
and you don't have anyone to talk to, and you're able to pick up your phone and you're able to say hi to this AI friend,
Yeah.
and it's going to mirror your emotions. It's going to respond perfectly every time.
Yeah.
I mean, how long before some really unhealthy attachments are created between human and
Mhm.
non-human? And that's where I think equipping kids early,
Yeah.
um, equipping pastors early to be able to, and the illustration I gave yesterday was telling pastors that they need to be prepared that we're not that far away from marriages ending because of
Mhm.
inappropriate conversations with AI um, companions.
Yeah.
That's going to happen. And
Mhm.
again, it's probably happening now. And so
Mhm.
I'm curious from you, have you thought about that as you're interacting with Chat GPT? Have you thought about the kind of transhuman side of the
Mhm.
conversation, how that might impact your students?
Yeah, and again, I think it all goes back to that over reliance, right? Is that the thing you're going back to for getting that interaction with, or are you going to a community, right? Are you purposely not going to a community and going to that? Well, there's a problem there, right? Even if it's not ChatGPT, you could do it social media, video games, food. You can put whatever you want in that.
Don't call it my food
It's
addiction like that.
I know,
That's
I'm
strange.
sorry. um, but I think that's what it comes down to. Are you
Yeah.
seeking that above everything else? And
That is
obviously,
a
there's going to be some people who do it um, and just say, well, this is the easier route. Well, yeah, I'm
yeah,
going to get companionship here. So, yeah, I'm having, let's go to the husband and wife thing. Hey, this last week was rough. We both snapped at each other a bunch of times. Man, this Chat GPT bot over here is going to always make me feel good. Well, then you start building that connection of when I'm sad here, well, I can go here, and all it
yeah.
takes is one time of saying, well, I'm not getting what I need here. So let me just keep going back and going back and going back.
Yeah, that's a great thought. That really, I mean, it's really no different than any other vice, really.
Mm-hmm.
how many times when there's trouble in life, I mean, how easy would it be to try to escape? And that's really what it is, to escape the situation that we're in by going to the bottle, or by going to
Yeah.
substances, or by going to, inappropriate content online, or, whatever
Yeah.
it is.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, this is just one, it's a new vice. Yeah, well, that's good. Well, thank you for that. Any
Mhm.
final thoughts that you want to share, just from a youth pastor's perspective on AI? I know we'll have you here on the
Yeah.
channel again in the future, but want to give you an opportunity to share anything you want before we jump into how to craft better prompts.
Yeah, I just think it's, kind of how we've been talking about. It's, instead of equipping people in fear, we should be equipping them of saying, hey, here's the good side of it, but also not treating it like it's a taboo subject. Like, obviously in the youth ministry world of, you never talk about sex, you never talk about dating, those kind of things. You'd always do it very carefully. And I think this is no different. When you talk about it, you have to be like, all right, this is a serious topic. We're not going to joke around, let's not
Yeah,
joke around about it. Let's recognize the highlights, and but also we have to recognize what can be the dangers of this,
sure.
and I think with specifically youth ministry, it's trying to be ahead of what they are, right? And it's really hard to do that because they're always on
Yeah.
social media and stuff. It's really
As soon as
hard,
as soon
but
as we as soon as the older as soon as we
yeah,
figure out what they're doing, they're on to the next thing. So it's a
yeah,
fool's errand. But
and I think that's where it's at. You obviously you can only get so much ahead with them, but I think of understanding why they're going to, and understanding their heart behind it. Because we haven't been in high school in however many years. I'm not going to say numbers because we're all going to feel old here real quick. But it's yeah, we remember what high school is like, but we're not in high school anymore. We're not in middle school anymore. So especially as a youth pastor, I'd try to just listen to them first and say, I can understand why you're feeling that way. And then saying, okay, but how can we turn that to not just divulge into this anymore? How do we bring it back to God and not just say this?
yeah. No, that's great. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Noah, for spending this time with us. And so